Okay, welcome back, everyone. We are about to embark on a new piece in our journey here. And I do want to just kind of recap a little bit about what we've done so far before we move on. To date, we've spent a good amount of time digging into the concept and the construction of the major scale, the C major scale in particular. And to remind, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. We've talked a good bit about five-finger technique and the three-finger crossover, which is thumb, index or pointer, middle, then thumb, all the way back up. We've talked a little bit about diads, actually more than a little bit at this point. We talked about the major second, the major third, the perfect fourth, perfect fifth, major sixth, major seventh, and the octave, all of which are from C up to the second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth scale degree. We've also talked about the opposites of the intervals. But before we talk about that, reminder, the 2, the 3, the 6, and the 7 all get called major, and the 4 and the 5 in the middle get called perfect. And then their opposites, which would be minor 7, minor 6, perfect fifth, perfect fourth, minor third, minor second, and then, of course, the diminished fifth, which is the same whether it's this way or this way. I think I mentioned that the diminished fifth was known as the devil's tone or the devil's interval, and one of the interesting things about it is that if you count half steps, you get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then another 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, continuing on, 6. So you can imagine why in the 1500s or so people might have thought that you were calling up the devil when you were playing that, because 666 is right in there. Anyway, that's a fun little tidbit. We're going to move on today to the next subject, which is a really big subject, and its ramifications are extremely powerful in terms of your music. While we're doing melody writing and one note at a time, scales are really important. And when you're doing two voice harmonies or lead vocal, background vocal, dyads are really important. And I like to think of individual notes and dyads as kind of letters and simple words in a language. Triads are more like everyday, basic, building block, usable, slightly larger words. Now, a triad, there's one of them. This one's called C major. And it's called a triad for a couple of reasons, one of which is that there are three notes. The other of which is that if you look closely, that's a triad, or that's a third, and that's also a third. So let's take a moment and dig into the construction here. You've got this note, C, E, G, and in C, E, G, there's a third from C, 1, 2, 3, 4 half steps, which I'm sure you all remember that 4 half steps is a major third. But then from E to G, E, 1, 2, 3 half steps is a minor third. So you have a major third interval and a minor third interval. And if you filled in the chart of the emotional worksheet, you probably have some words to describe your emotional state when you hear this major third. And you probably have some other words to describe this other state, which is this minor third. And you'll probably notice that they're a little bit different. This one is probably happy, and this one is probably not as happy. And it's interesting that these two dyads, or these three notes, come together to make this overwhelmingly happy triad, or this happy word. And one thing I tend to tell students is that we tend to hear things from the bottom up. And so when we hear this, our ear immediately gravitates to the lowest note and creates a foundation, and then it starts creating relationships. So I hear this, and then I hear that, and I hear it as a major third. This, I don't hear as a minor third above this. I hear this as a perfect fifth above this. So the 5 to the 1, and then the 3 to the 1, both kind of reinforce this strong, happy feeling of the major chord. So it's a triad because there are three notes, and because each of the intervals is a third. Now, this is by no means the only chord we have, nor is it the only chord that's in the C major scale, but it is the first one that we look at because it's the one where the foundation is C, or home, or the first scale degree. Now, just like we have scale degrees in the notes, where you have the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 scale degrees, each scale degree not only has a dyad, but now we get to give it a triad, which means in C we have the C major triad. Now, if you move up the note to D, which is the second scale degree, you can see the shape on the screen. This sort of every other white note, boom, skip this one, skip this one, this one. This kind of leapfrog construction of the triad continues when we go to D. And the root note of this chord is the second scale degree, or D. But what's interesting is that if you move up from C to D and build the same every other white note sort of leapfrog third triad chord, what you end up with is the opposite. Because starting on D, you have 1, 2, 3 half steps, and then 1, 2, 3, 4 half steps. And just like we hear this one as kind of happy, we tend to hear this one as not happy. And again, it's because we hear from the bottom up. So the first relationship we hear is we find the low note, that's the root, that's the foundation, and then we hear the first relationship, which is a minor third, which is not necessarily all that happy an interval. And then we hear the perfect fifth. So we have a strong fifth and a sad third combining to make a strong, sad chord. And this is known as a minor triad. Now, just to review, most of what you're going to do in music and composition and writing and producing that has to do with chords, most of what you're going to do is either going to be a major chord or a minor chord. Those are pretty much the two largest basic building blocks we have in terms of chords. And every note, no matter what note it is, every note can build a major and a minor triad. Just like every note can build a major scale through whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half, every note on the piano can build a major or minor triad. Which means if you want a happy sound in the key of, say, B, you build a major chord and you go 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 1, 2, 3. So there's your B major triad. And that should sound just as happy as that. Or that. Or that. Kind of sounds like baseball after a while. And all I'm showing you is that by doing a major third and then a minor third, you build a major triad. Just like any time you do whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half, you build a major scale. Well, conversely, you can build a minor triad the same way. So from B again, 1, 2, 3 half steps, and there's that sad interval, and then 1, 2, 3, 4. So there's your sad B, happy B, sad B. And notice, that's all we're doing is taking the middle note and either lowering it by a half step or not. So take a look at C. C minor. Remember, 3 half steps, 4 half steps, or 4 half steps, 3 half steps. So within the C major scale, it's all very easy because everything's on the white keys. What I'm showing you is that it really doesn't matter what note you start with. If you know that it's 4 half steps, then 3 half steps, you've built a major chord. If it's 3 half steps, then 4 half steps, you've built a minor chord. Now there's a pattern that goes through the C major scale, just like whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. In fact, it's because of whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half that we get this pattern. And the pattern is major, minor, minor, major, major, minor. And now we have to pause because I have to introduce a new chord to you. It's a little hard to hear up there. I'll move it down an octave. And this, if you look closely, is B, D, F. And from B, you have 1, 2, 3 half steps. And now you would expect 4 half steps, but it's actually only another 3. 1, 2, 3. So whenever you have a minor third and a minor third in one triad, you have a new kind of third or a new kind of triad. And this triad is known as diminished. The reason why it's diminished is in all other chords, the outside relationship is a fifth. Ooh, and you can hear right there, it's no longer that strong, stable fifth. It's actually the same as this. So within a diminished triad, you actually have this devil's tone. And let's prove that. It should be 6 half steps. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Sure enough, 6 half steps. So within the C major scale, we have major triad, minor, major, major, minor, diminished. And then again, major. So just like you memorized whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half, you should absolutely memorize major, minor, minor, major, major, minor, diminished. Major, minor, minor, major, major, minor, and then diminished. And that is what's known as the diatonic triad sequence of the C major scale, of really any major scale, but for right now we're focusing on C. The C major scale has and I'll play it down here, major, minor, minor, major, major, minor, diminished, then major again. And it's really easy to hear when I throw the bass in underneath it. You can really get the emotional quality here. So one thing to note, though, as I go up, it's really hard to hear this as a sad chord in and of itself because you're hearing it in relationship to where you started. And that's just something about the triad sequence that you have to remember, is that when you're practicing and moving up, that sounds very practicey. It doesn't really sound musical. But if, out of nowhere, I just decide that I really want to kind of get a sense of what these chords sound like on their own, you give it a little bit of time, clear your ears, don't remember the pitches, and then just play one of these chords. For example, in and of itself now, that sounds pretty not so happy. So you can hear as I just sort of improvise around just the chord, the feeling of the tone of the chord and the sadness of the minor starts to take a little bit more shape. So don't be surprised if while you're practicing, you may not be feeling each of these chords in any particular way on their own as you're going through, But if you just pause and hang out with one particular chord for a while, you'll really start to get the flavor. And as far as what I was doing in the left hand here, I'm just going to the 5th, 3rd. You'll find that this is exactly the same as that. There's E, G, B, and here's E, G, B. So remember in earlier videos when I said it's a good idea to practice left hand walking the bass and the right hand does the chord or the melody? That's all I'm doing. I'm taking an E minor chord and then playing it in the right hand, but also kind of playing around with the same chord on the left. And it's real easy to find a lot of different kinds of songs and at least improvisational starting points for what could be tracks in there.